My brother turned his eyes to me. Nancy, you've been working in the hospital for so many years and you're an associate physician too. You should have money. This money for the surgery. I shook my head. Brother, I'm just a surgeon. I don't really know much about Alan's situation. Our hospital doesn't specialize in this area either. As far as I know, there's a good hospital in Shanghai. Why don't you try it? My brother smoked another pack of cigarettes and finally decided to treat his precious son. My brother still insisted that Alan was a son. He didn't realize he was supposed to be a girl. Even if they had to operate, it would only make him a girl. The night before they packed up to leave, my door was pushed open gently. Alan stood in the narrow gap and stared at me timidly, calling out for his aunt. "What's the matter?" I asked. "Can I come with you?" Alan said in a voice like a mosquito. "I envy my sister." He was talking about my daughter. Erica was born a few years after Ellen. She's 7 now. Because I stopped interfering with my sister-in-law's birth. So she was born and she's very cute. I guess it's because everything changed. So my son became a girl. It doesn't matter. Whether it's a boy or a girl, it's still my baby and I love her just the same. I shook my head as I listened to him. "I'm just your aunt." The light in Alan's eyes dimmed. He pinched his palm dead center, his eyes full of complaints. "I don't want to be a boy, I'm a girl," he said. "Then fight for it yourself." I answered him. They took Ellen to Shanghai to see a doctor without my mom. She wasn't well, so she packed her bags and moved in with us. At home, my sister-in-law treated her like a nanny. At home, she's a grandparent. She had to ask Erica to get her a drink of water. If Erica spills water, she gets scolded. "You're useless. You're just like your mom when she was a kid. You can't even hold a glass of water." I got the chills. This is her granddaughter. In her mind, is my brother the only family she has? She forgets she's a woman. I put Erica behind me. With a cold face. "Mom, watch your mouth. This is my house, not yours. If you don't like it here, you can leave. You don't get to insult Erica in her own house." My mom screamed in the face. "I'm your mom. How do you talk to me?" I laughed and ignored her. And then I went to bed at night. Erica wrapped her arms around me. She wouldn't let me leave. My heart turned into a puddle. In the darkness, I stared coldly at the closed bedroom door. Suddenly I realized I don't get involved in their affairs. Instead, it only made them go even further and want more. Whether it's in my past life or in this life, they won't let me go so easily, unless I take the initiative. Luckily, that chance came soon enough. I was alone at home when the loan sharks came. My mom's hands were tied and she was struggling for her life. When she saw me, she immediately said, "Hurry up. Nancy, transfer $100 to them first, or else my hands will be chopped off." The bald, tattooed, at least 108 tall man saw me and immediately came up to take my hand. I waved it away. "I have a surveillance camera here." He looked up and got a little more restrained. He laughed. "Your mom borrowed $800 from me. The repayment is due in a week. But it's been 10 days and still no news. I had no choice but to come and get it myself." "What $800? When I wrote the note, it was $500. My mom's face turned red and she yelled at me. "You're loan sharks. You lied to me." The note was written in black and white. Just because you say you can't read doesn't mean you can't recognize it. I brought the note over and took a look. My mom's name was really on it. My mom immediately burst into tears. "Nancy, listen to me. I didn't know it was a loan shark. Your brother told me he borrowed the money from a friend. I didn't know it was a loan shark. My heart is not in a state of flux. I don't have to think about it. My brother and sister-in-law must have done it. After they left for Shanghai, I found a reason for my mom to come and live with me. Do you think I'm stupid asking me to pay for this? I tore up the note with my hand. Big Bowhead's eyes went wide. I don't have any money. Whoever owes you money can get it from whoever you want. My name isn't on it. It's no use looking for me. Seeing me look so calm, the big guy was a bit panicked too. But soon, he took a knife from his pocket and put it in my mom's hand. He threatened me that if you don't get $100 Zaro today, your mom will have to suffer. My mom wailed. Nancy, you bitch. I've worked so hard to raise you, and you've watched people chopping off my fingers without giving me a penny. You'll go to hell if you die. I let out a stupid laugh. Fine, chop it off if you want. I'll give you a piece of advice. Whoever took your money should ask for it. If you're late, you'll lose every cent. If you can't, my brother has a house. You can ask him to sell it and pay you back. My mom was so angry, her eyes would fall out. She didn't think I'd become so cold-hearted after being so obedient. I've already called the police. I shook the cell phone in my hand. I said calmly, if you don't leave now, the police will take you away. The big man took control of my mom's arm. He used a knife to cut a bloody wound on the back of her hand. My mom fainted with a scream. I just watched impatiently. He knew I wouldn't get any money from him, so he cursed and dragged my mom out by her hair. Alan came back from the operation. The three of them didn't even dare to go home. Although they were thousands of miles away, they heard that the loan sharks almost killed my mom. Now my mom is paralyzed and waiting for someone to take care of her. The outside of the house is sprayed with red paint and the smell of urine and shit. It's a good thing they live in the middle of nowhere and no one's around. Otherwise, the neighbors would have called the police. My brother and sister-in-law had no choice but to come to my house. Nancy, $1 million is nothing to you, just a few pennies. Do you want us to die for $1 million? We had no choice but to borrow the money for Alan's operation. Ellen stood behind her with her head bowed in gloom, and without a word. Sister-in-law is rolling around on the floor. The operation was a success, thanks to the loan sharks. Alan is smart. He'll make a lot of money in the future. They are still dreaming of their Alan's future fortune. Unbeknownst to me, Alan is standing behind my sister-in-law, but I think he's in danger now. After all, he wanted to be a girl. Can't help, I said coolly. Where can I get that kind of money? Don't you have a flat in the city? Sell it and you can pay it off. I knew you were after that flat. Now you're showing your true colors. My sister-in-law stood up in a flash and gritted her teeth fiercely. I'm telling you, that house is for Alan. It's not for you to think about. When Alan makes money, you'll be living in your little house for the rest of your life. Let's go, honey. Sister-in-law dragged Alan by the arm and turned her head to leave. Alan couldn't help himself. He looked back at me. He seemed to want to say something. But in the end, he didn't say anything. My mom is dead. She was starved to death in her room. The big eyes were long gone. She was chained up and couldn't move. If my brother and sister-in-law had been brave enough to go in and take a look, they could have saved her life. It's a pity. They found another cheap motel and never went back. It was only when a homeless man smelled something strange and called the police that they found her dead. It was such a big deal that the loan sharks were arrested. My brothers and sister-in-law's debts just disappeared in the thin air. That's why their mother's death turned out to be a good thing for them. They weren't sad at all. On the contrary, they laughed at her funeral. I looked at the familiar black and white face on the portrait. I thought it was funny. If she knew her favorite son, after her death, how would she feel? How would she feel? I'm sure she wouldn't be happy. The funeral was over. I turned to leave, but a hand suddenly grabbed me. I looked down. It was Alan. He said, "Auntie, I was wrong." I was a little stunned. "What?" "Please take me with you," Alan said. "I swear, the next time I hear you cry out for help, I will help you." My heart sank. But before I could say anything, my sister-in-law rushed out and she slapped Alan, knocking him to the ground. "You shameless thing." As she cried, she scolded him severely. "Your father and I gave our all for you. Even your grandmother's life was lost. How dare you take this medicine?" The bottle fell to the ground and the medicine inside was scattered all over the place. "It's an estrogen stimulant." Ellen finally bawled her eyes out. "I don't want to be a boy. I'm a girl. Why do I have to be a man? Just because your family thinks men are useful, I have to be a man. Why should I? I don't think my dad is useful either. He's such a loser. All he does is gamble and drink. He's a man. I don't see him making much money." My brother didn't realize Alan thought that way. His hands were shaking with anger. Bastard. My brother and sister-in-law were fighting and cursing. Alan started screaming and struggling, but eventually he just fell to the ground and didn't move. He was bleeding and staring at the sky with numb eyes. I didn't feel like watching anymore. I turned around and wanted to leave. But he suddenly crawled towards me and grabbed my pants leg with his bloody hand. "Auntie, I was wrong. I know I was wrong. I was too weak. It was my mom. She told me, if you have a boy, I'm sure you won't be so nice to me anymore. I'm worried. I'm worried that you won't be good to me. That's why I thought it would be better if my brother wasn't born. Please take me away." I didn't realize the truth was like this. Just because of a few words from my sister-in-law, I kicked his hand away and saw the light in his eyes dimming. I said coldly, "Life doesn't have so many chances to start over. Since you've made a choice, you can't regret it anymore." Alan was beaten up by his brother and sister-in-law and was hospitalized. They had a fight in the hospital. A man is always stronger. Sister-in-law didn't dare to fight anymore, so she took out her anger on Alan. I've never been to see him, but the nurses at the hospital told me a lot about him. When my brother drank too much or lost money, he would beat her up. When he was so weak, she would beat Alan as hard as she could, resulting in black and blue bruises all over Alan's body. Alan's condition was unstable after the operation, and he was always taking hormone-stimulating drugs. His health was deteriorating. Finally, after being caught again, his sister-in-law threw all the drugs he had hidden down the stairs and forced him to take 3 times the dose he was supposed to take, which directly led to Alan's kidney failure and his admission to the ICU. That's when my sister-in-law finally realized she was scared. She rushed to my office. She begged me, "Nancy, you know Alan is an obedient boy. As long as he continues to take his medication seriously, there's no big problem for him to be a normal man in the future. You're his aunt. You'll help him, right?" I asked the security guard to send her out. Even if their family has a throne to inherit, it's not my turn. Who am I to tear? My sister-in-law rolled around outside my office and cursed me for over an hour. I didn't even go out. She had no choice. She had to swallow her saliva and leave silently. Then I heard that my sister-in-law sold the flat in the house without my brother's knowledge. Alan was also saved. But the day he was transferred back to the general ward, my sister-in-law squeezed Alan's arm. She cried and laughed. But there was nothing left. When I heard from them again, it was when the hospital suddenly brought in the poisoned people. When the doctor was looking for the family's signature, he looked up their cell phones and found that one of the contacts was me. I ran over to see. It was my brother and sister-in-law. They were lying on the stretcher, vomiting blood. The nurse whispered. Their son had put rat poison in the chicken soup. In the end, they died because they couldn't be resuscitated. The last thing my sister-in-law said before she died was that you must be a man. She mumbled something like this. She fell into a deep sleep. Alan couldn't be sentenced because of his age. He was sent to a juvenile detention center. Time passed quickly. I was promoted to chief physician at the age of 35. I was also given the opportunity to further my education. On the day my plane was about to leave, I received a strange phone call. It was Alan. He asked me to borrow money for the operation. Alan said, "Auntie, can you give me $200? Low dollars?" I turned him down. He cursed at me on the phone. I asked him, "Alan, since you've become a man, why don't you just be a man? What's so great about being a man?" Alan was paranoid. In my last life, I was a girl, but I was 100 times happier than in this life. Alan complained, "It's all my mom's fault. It's her fault I'm the way I am now. It's no good being a man. I became a girl. I can come back to you, right?" I hung up and didn't respond to his question, because I realized he's just like his mom. Paranoid, vicious, selfish. After a 10-hour flight, I landed and received a message from my husband. He informed me that Alan had died. He had a sex change operation at an unknown clinic. He died on the operating table from an overdose of anesthesia. And at that time, his surgery hadn't even begun. Until he died. He never got to be a girl. Hanging up the phone, I looked out the window at the floating clouds. I sighed deeply. Boy or girl? Does it really matter? The truth is, gender doesn't matter at all. What matters is a good heart and a positive attitude. Both boys and girls have the opportunity to change their lives. End of story.